On Christmas morning, while everyone exchanged gifts and celebrated, an isolated cabin concealed a dark secret. Inside, what seemed like a scene from a Christmas fairy tale was, in fact, a setting of pure horror. A neighbor, puzzled by the silence in that house decorated with twinkling lights, decided to investigate. When he opened the door, he saw something he would never forget. Bodies sprawled on the floor, surrounded by dark stains mingling with the Christmas decorations. The smell of blood and the icy sound of the wind blowing through the open door made the scene even more macabre. The snow outside concealed secrets, but the evidence inside the cabin told a story of betrayal, obsession, and murder. The police quickly realized that this was not the work of chance or an intruder. This crime was premeditated, carefully planned by those you would least expect. You are about to uncover the details of a deadly pact that began as a promise of love and ended in blood. Get ready for a story where not even the Christmas spirit could erase the darkness in the human heart. To understand the tragedy of that Christmas morning, one must know the characters who made up this grim tale. At the center of it all were Daniel Harper and Laura Bennett, a couple whose relationship was as intense as it was dangerous. Daniel was a 32-year-old man, charming and seemingly confident, but carrying a past marked by failures and rejections. Laura, at just 25, was vibrant, passionate, and completely captivated by Daniel, to the point of ignoring the signs that something was wrong. The victims of the crime were none other than Laura's husband, Thomas Bennett, and Daniel's sister, Anna Harper. Thomas, 35, was a successful businessman, highly respected in the small community. Anna, on the other hand, was the cornerstone of Daniel's life, a protective sister who did everything to keep him away from Laura, whom she considered a bad influence. The relationship between Daniel and Laura was, at the very least, explosive. Their clandestine affair had started in secret but soon became public, sparking a wave of scandals and rumors throughout the village. Thomas, unable to control the situation, threatened to expose the affair, while Anna did everything she could to convince Daniel to leave Laura. Over time, tensions escalated. Daniel and Laura began to see Thomas and Anna as insurmountable obstacles to their happiness. It was then that, amid vows of love, they decided the only solution was to eliminate them. Deep down, no one imagined that this passionate couple could go so far. However, what happened in that isolated cabin was the culmination of a relationship that had already crossed all boundaries. The romance between Daniel and Laura, which had begun as an escape from the monotony of their lives, quickly turned into a destructive obsession. Each forbidden encounter was marked by promises that one day they could be together, far from everyone and everything. But for them, there was one clear problem: Thomas and Anna would never allow it. During a particularly tense night, after an argument with Anna, Daniel brought up what he believed to be the only solution: if they don't exist, no one can keep us apart. The idea, initially spoken in desperation, soon turned into a real plan when Laura, desperate to free herself from Thomas's control, agreed. In the weeks that followed, the couple began planning every detail. The isolated cabin in the woods, owned by Daniel's family, seemed like the perfect spot. Surrounded by snow and far from the village, they believed it would be easy to cover up their actions. They decided Christmas would be the ideal moment, a time when no one would suspect a family gathering. The crime's preparation was meticulous. Laura worked to convince Thomas that an intimate celebration at the cabin would be a chance for reconciliation. Daniel, for his part, did the same with Anna, promising that this gathering would be an opportunity to make peace. To them, the plan was perfect: lure the victims, make them believe they were safe, and then carry out the pact. The pact was sealed with a promise of eternal love. "It's for us," Laura repeated at every stage of the plan. But what they failed to realize was that they were sowing the seeds of their own destruction. On Christmas Eve, the cabin looked like it belonged on a postcard. Lights twinkled in the windows, snow fell gently, and the warmth of the fireplace promised to welcome the guests. Thomas and Anna arrived separately, both eager to resolve the tensions that had dominated the past few weeks. The atmosphere was initially friendly, filled with forced laughter and conversations masking the true intentions behind that meeting. Laura had prepared a full dinner, decorated the table with candles, and played Christmas music to create the illusion of normalcy. Daniel, however, could barely hide the tension in his movements. He knew that night would be decisive. After a rehearsed toast and a few gift exchanges, the moment came. Laura offered to fetch something from the kitchen, an apparently innocent gesture but one that was part of the plan. She returned with 2 glasses of wine, handing one to each victim. Unbeknownst to them, the wine had been spiked with a substance to disorient them. What happened next was swift and brutal. Thomas was the first to fall, confused and dazed. Daniel attacked him without hesitation, striking him with a heavy object while Laura watched, trembling but determined not to back down. Anna tried to react, but Laura restrained her, pushing her against the fireplace while Daniel finished what they had started. The sound of bodies falling, mixed with the crackling of the burning wood in the fireplace, filled the room. When it was over, the couple stood in silence, staring at what they had done. The cabin, once cozy and festive, now looked like a nightmare scene. They spent the rest of the night cleaning as much as they could, but haste and panic led them to make mistakes. Footprints in the snow outside and bloodstains in improbable places would later serve as the clues that gave them away to the police. As they left the cabin, Daniel and Laura embraced, believing they had secured their future together. Little did they know they had sealed their fate. The next morning, the village's silence was broken by a scream that echoed through the snow. It was the neighbor, who, passing by the cabin, noticed the door ajar and decided to check what was going on. Inside, he found a scene of horror no one was prepared to face. Thomas and Anna were dead, their bodies arranged in a way that suggested a brutal attack. Christmas decorations scattered across the floor, mixed with dried blood, created a macabre contrast. The tree, still lit, blinked eerily, as if mocking the tragedy. The neighbor immediately called the police, and soon the news spread throughout the small community. People who had been enjoying the holiday dropped their celebrations and rushed to the cabin. The shock was immediate. It was unthinkable that something so terrible could happen in such a peaceful place, especially on a day symbolizing unity and harmony. The village, once united by the Christmas spirit, was consumed by fear and outrage. How could this have happened? Who could be capable of such brutality on such a sacred day? Rumors began to swirl, and Daniel's name quickly surfaced in conversations. To many, he had always behaved oddly, and his relationship with Laura was a constant subject of gossip. But to others, the idea that Daniel and Laura could be responsible seemed absurd. They were young, in love, and seemingly harmless. However, the tragedy began to reveal the cracks in a community that thought it knew its residents. While the police secured the crime scene and collected evidence, the entire village awaited answers, unaware that the culprits were much closer than they imagined. The arrival of the police brought a new dynamic to the crime scene. Officers began combing through every detail of the cabin in search of clues to explain what had happened. Soon, the first signs emerged that this was no impulsive crime or the work of an intruder. The footprints in the snow, leading away from the cabin and disappearing into the forest, were too orderly to be random. Inside the cabin, the evidence told a disturbing story. Disarrayed objects indicated a struggle, while bloodstains scattered across the floor and walls revealed the violence of the attack. However, what caught the investigators' attention was the carefully staged scene. Despite the brutality, some details suggested prior planning, such as the glasses found with traces of a substance apparently used to incapacitate the victims. The investigation progressed quickly. As is customary in crimes involving close relationships, the initial focus fell on Laura and Daniel, as they were the closest to the victims. Investigators noticed something peculiar about their behavior. Both seemed cooperative, but their calm demeanor was out of place given the gravity of the situation. As they delved into Daniel and Laura's backgrounds, investigators discovered that their relationship was viewed with suspicion by the community. Additionally, the recent tensions between them and the victims provided a clear motive for the crime. Small inconsistencies in their statements began to emerge, and the analysis of phone records and their movements in the days leading up to the crime painted an incriminating picture. The officers realized they were dealing with more than an isolated tragedy. It was a premeditated crime, executed with precision and driven by a love that had crossed the boundaries of obsession. With each new piece of evidence, the net around Laura and Daniel tightened, and the truths about what happened in that cabin became undeniable. When the investigation concluded, Laura and Daniel were formally charged with the murders of Thomas and Anna. The ensuing trial drew attention not only from the local community but also from the entire region, turning the case into a spectacle of horror. Everyone wanted to understand how a seemingly loving couple could commit such an atrocity. In court, prosecutors meticulously detailed the sequence of events. Using the evidence collected at the cabin, phone records, and Daniel and Laura's contradictory testimonies, they built an irrefutable case. The narrative was clear: the couple, driven by an obsessive desire to be together, crafted a cruel plan to eliminate any obstacles to their relationship. The defense attempted to argue that Daniel and Laura's actions were the result of psychological pressure and uncontrollable emotions. However, the meticulous details of the plan, including choosing Christmas as the perfect cover and using substances to incapacitate the victims, weakened this strategy. During the trial, the victims' family members described the devastation the crime had caused in their lives. The impact was so profound that even months after the incident, the village still seemed to live under the shadow of that tragedy. The prosecutor emphasized that the crime was not just against the victims but also against the community itself, which lost its innocence that Christmas night. In the end, the verdict was unanimous: guilty. Daniel and Laura were sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The judge declared that the crime was calculated, cruel, and driven by selfishness that completely disregarded the value of human life. Even after the trial's conclusion, the scars left by the case continued to mark the village. For many, Christmas would never be the same, and the cabin, once seen as a symbol of comfort, became a constant reminder of the darkness hidden in human hearts.